And our friend Jason Stevens joins us, and it's about the economics of soccer. I know that we've got to talk about private equity getting involved in what's going on in Atletico de Madrid. We've got other stuff to get into when it comes to crime and punishment, and some folks getting caught and some folks not. I mean, obviously. Do you want to start in Turkey, or do you want to start with streaming?
I think Turkey's a good one to start with, right? I mean, the story that's come out of there in the last, week or so was 997 players in League 1, 2 and 3, further 27 in the top league, 371 out of 571 match officials have all been investigated for alleged breaches of betting regulations, etc. I mean, it's actually quite incredible. You've got one referee, senior referee, that's got like 18,000 accounts of recent.
How do you bet that much?
Well, I don't know. I mean, that's the thing, isn't it? I mean, you are constantly betting on every game, and so yeah. I mean, it's mind blowing. Then you got another 10 refs that have had 10,000 bets, or they placed 10,000 bets each over a short period of time. You've got a real problem, right? Because now there's a massive shortfall of referees.
Mm-hmm.
There's a massive shortfall in players because all of these referees and players are being banned. So now we've got Turkey basically appealing to FIFA for an emergency transfer window so that the whole league structure, 1, 2, 3 and 4, don't get stopped or pause. So it's going to be really fascinating what FIFA do. I mean, I'm really interested in this transfer window that could materialise for a couple of weeks in order for them to get their house in order. But who's going to be refereeing these games? 371 out of 570. I mean, they're going to be shipping in referees from over there. I mean, I did see in one of the countries, I think it was like one of the Eastern European countries, where they put lie detectors. They had to go for a lie detector test before they refereed a game because they were scared of all of this like illegalised betting, organised crime infiltration. So let's bring that into Turkey.
And 27 of the players of the 1,024, 27 from the Super League have all been suspended. And among those 27, you had players from Galatasaray and Besiktas. I mean, this goes all the way up to the top of the standings in the top division in the Turkish pyramid. This is insane to me.
Yeah, well, another way of looking at it, 14 out of the 18 teams have had someone that's involved in betting, etc. So, yeah, I mean, that's the only thing I could think of that was closely remote to that was China back in the early part of the century, where they had hundreds of referees, club officials and players, and then, long jail sentences, huge fines and lifetime bans were in place. And again, you had something in Germany. Well, it wasn't so much Germany, but the backbone of the operation was found to be in Germany, but actually sort of involved 200 fixtures across Europe, etc., and they were investigated. Then we had Belgium in 2000, I think it was about 2020, 2019, where they again, the authorities infiltrated a betting scandal, etc., involving Eastern European teams. So this ain't new. I mean, we know that this is a big part of football, but it's not the part of football we want to be associated with, but it's also a part of football that we can't seem to get on top of. And it is a bit contradictory, right? Because you've got betting and everything on the main sponsors in every club, in every league. And, listen, in England, we've seen cases of players having betting accounts and players being accused of betting on their own performance, etc. So, even the top leagues, are not free from this. But, yeah, I don't know how you can actually control this 100%. I mean, because when you have something this broad, I mean, that impacts the game massively, right? Will Turkey actually ever recover? in a sense of having a global recognised league. Of course, it will recover internally, but externally, will it ever recover? Because again, reading some of the reports, some of these games that have apparently been bet on have been Champions League games. So that's the big stick. That's probably UEFA and FIFA are going to beat them with. Actually, what you do in your own country is one thing, but when you start bringing it into the big competition, the global competition, hey, you ain't getting away with that. So I think there will be bigger punishments for those involved in the Champions League.
And at the same time, one of the club's actual chairman was needed to be arrested, basically. Turkey state-owned Anadolu News Agency reported a court had ruled to arrest the Eyüpspor chairman and 7 others as a part of the investigation. And so literally it's referees, it's players, it is apparently, it is alleged that it is a team chairman from a team in the top of the Turkish pyramid. I mean, this has permeated and infiltrated about every single layer of the pyramid in Turkey. And I don't know, I mean, we don't know how many other countries are like this. I would imagine that there are countries that are far more difficult to monitor, like we mentioned with club ownership, that it's far more difficult to monitor, especially with offshore betting and how they're hidden and all these other places where you can have these kinds of things. This is going to be, for me anyway, it's going to be a really interesting petri dish as to how 60% of your officials, 1,000 players, a club chair allegedly, how this affects that entire pyramid. This could, I mean, you could sit there and look at it one way and go, this could be catastrophic for the pyramid, but the pessimist in me is kind of looking at it the other way. It'll be just kind of like, well, don't do it again, because you have to restore what you've had so it doesn't all fall down.
Well, yeah, exactly, because the numbers are so vast, isn't it? I mean, it's easy to say, oh, let's ban them for life and, give them 3 years suspended sentence. But like you said, who's going to referee those games? Does that mean the ecosystem shuts down? Well, it probably does, actually, because, we've got 1,000 players. I mean, if you just do some simple maths here, that's 100 teams, right? But, it's close to 100. That is pretty much the whole ecosystem. They must be all betting on themselves against each other. Those games must have been crazy to watch. I mean, that's another story. But, yeah, I mean, that's massive. Okay, the good news is that it's only 27 from the top league.
Only.
Only 27 compared to the others. So, in theory, the top league could, be still run with limited impact, but at the same time, it's the reputational impact now, isn't it? I mean, there was a case. I mean, again, I would say a couple of years ago, Turkey was really in the frame to replace France as the 5th best league in Europe because it has so much going for it in terms of a product, entertainment, investment, amount of interest on match days, TV, etc. However, I think this has just shot that completely now, and it's, I don't know where it will sit now in terms of the global ranking. So it's had massive impact. The image of the country, absolutely. All right, the country itself politically has seen military coups and whatever in the last 5 to 10 years, etc. So maybe this is a reflection of some of the bigger issues that are going on. I mean, okay, we can always ask, why do players bet on themselves? Why do organised crime try and infiltrate lesser players? Okay, we can always choose the easy option that they don't get paid as much as the top players, but sorry, shouldn't be an excuse. It's not an excuse because you're playing professional football, something you want to do, and you're earning a living from it. You're not earning a living like the top players, but you're still earning a living from it. You're doing something that you love and thousands of people respect, right? So to actually question the integrity and the game, on the local, national. I mean, I don't know how some of these players will actually overcome that, because their careers and image are be finished. Is it worth it for whatever pounds and pence that you're going to get for this? Is it really worth it if you get caught? It mind blows me. It really does.
And one of the other interesting elements in this, we mentioned that it was the club president for Eyüpspor and Fatih Sadak, who is a former owner of Kasımpaşa. They're being questioned as a part of the probe. Kasımpaşa was placed under trusteeship back in September following a separate corruption investigation into the holding company that previously owned the club. And then you have, it's an 18-team league in the top flight. Kasımpaşa is 15th out of 18. Eyüpspor is 17th out of 18. 16, 17, and 18 all get relegated. And as of right now, like I said, we're 12 matches into the season, but Kasimpasa is only a point out from the relegation zone. The mind can kind of wander and go, well, hey, now wait a minute. Okay, if this dude allegedly was betting either for or against his club and they're in the relegation zone right now, what was he looking at? What were these two guys allegedly looking at in a situation like this? The mind kind of wanders into subverting your own success into a situation like that as something to look into and investigate.
Yeah, I mean, there is the other argument, right, in terms of how much influence did he have on, if he has at all, had on players in the way that their actions are in these games, i.e., I mean, what are we talking about? Betting in terms of getting a yellow card? Because you got the way that they do betting now. I mean, it could be a yellow card, it could be conceding 2 or 3 fouls, giving away corners, free kicks, shots at goal, own goals. It could be anything, right? We're not saying that this is related to actually throwing a game.
Right.
But what we are saying is that, the integrity issue is massively now questioned Turkey globally, right? I mean, like I said, how we will never forget this, right? Because as I mentioned straight away, 25 years ago, China had something different. 2009, Europe, but the base was Germany. So it's not forgotten. Do you know what I mean? So, it's just, how do you overcome that? Now, obviously, it gives Turkey a complete clean slate now, or an opportunity to get a clean slate and absolutely set themselves to eradicate all forms of corruption. Because I'm sure the owners and the other key stakeholders will know who the key people are. And FIFA will probably have an idea, stroke UEFA. So there is an opportunity here to do something good about the governance of the game in that area. And, let's see. I mean, there's so many different options they could do, and I'm not an advocate of it, but maybe having a franchise league there anyway. So it stops all of that, and you've just got, you've got this like something like the Argentina system, where they have a promotion and relegation on average of 3 years, something like that. I'm not an advocate of it, but at the end of the day, it may provide some stability for these clubs to organise themselves and put them in the right direction, rather than actually result into tactics like this, in order to get a competitive advantage, whether that's individually or collectively.
We'll keep an eye on Turkey as things go as a microcosm of what is going on these days. And then the other larger topic to get into, apparently there was a survey that was released, and I'm shocked when I read this, but illegal streaming of football is on the rise in the UK. What? Question mark.
I mean, there's many people that are guilty of this one. Do you know what I mean? And it's the cost. Listen, I'm not sitting there. I lecture with universities, right? So I come across students 18 to 24. Part of my main job, and I have this conversation with them on a regular basis. And it's a case of the reasons why you do it. And it was actually quite funny this week because we went into detail on this, etc. Because obviously, when you buy something at a low cost, you don't think about where the money's going. You don't think about what the money's being used for, etc. And sometimes you need stories like this, which was breached by the Athletic. They've done a really good podcast on this, actually. A guy called Avon Leventhal. It's worth a listen. It's about an hour and 10 minutes long, but it really does dig deep into this, underworld of illegal streaming. And some of the facts and figures that he actually presented in that is quite alarming. One of them being, i.e., roughly about 9 million people in England alone, 50% of that have confessed to using a Fire Stick, an illegal streaming platform to watch football and other sports. And another 50% of those people neither confirming or denying, which means to me that they do it and they're just not admitting it, right? So you've got 9 million people that actually use an illegal Fire Stick to watch football. Now, what are the reasons for it? Okay, so it is because in England, you have to pay for Sky. Sky can be anything up to like £100 a month, for channels and Wi-Fi, etc. You've got then Amazon, which stream Champions League games. You've got BT, which has still got a small package of the Premier League, but they tend to pick a high-profile game. And then there's 3 platforms there just for your domestic games. ticket prices to go and watch games are so high now because 40% of English games now are taken up by tourist fans, and that's not a problem, by the way. But it's a case of it does put higher prices on, and where you've got our friends from the pond that are taking over the clubs, they're used to charging higher fees for their entertainment sports. So, I don't know what the average price is for an American game, for a high-profile game, but I'm hearing figures of around $200 to go and watch a good game. Here in England, we have caps for away fans for like 30 quid. We used to, and then tickets were reasonably priced. But as I said, they've all jumped massively. So the other thing is that the economy, the amount of disposable income people have has really been suppressed in recent times. So if you are trying to save costs on leisure activities, then a Fire Stick, because it's not just sport that's on there. I mean, you do get the other films because, let's be fair, Amazon, Netflix, and all these other ones, Paramount and Apple, they're all on there. So you can get other programs as well. And we are in a world now where streaming sort of controls the way that we consume now our TV habits, So, yeah, I mean, it's like the fake football shirt, right? If you can get something a little bit cheaper, people will, because that's the mentality. But again, looking at the other side of it, where's this money going? Organised crime, sex trafficking gangs, etc. It's a big issue. But the biggest issue that's being missed, and again, Adam sort of highlights this in his podcast, is the Fire Sticks actually, the organised crime can actually insert viruses. Once you access the streaming platforms, i.e., I think Stream East is one of the biggest ones. Once you infiltrate that, they can send a virus back into your Fire Stick, and then that virus can collect all your data from your personal laptop computer. And then UK police actually announced recently that 5 million people have basically been reported crimes linked to Fire Sticks last year alone. So there's pros and then there's cons, and I suppose we're all guilty of this. Until it happens to you, you believe you're invincible, and it won't happen, right? But it is a problem, and I don't know. Maybe a Premflix solution can do that, where you actually the Premier League doesn't rely on these third parties to broadcast the games. They could actually build the infrastructure in place to do it. The reason they don't do it, and they've got the capabilities of doing it. It's taken them a long time to do it, but they've got the capabilities to do it. But it's that unknown, because at the moment it's guaranteed income, right? For football, it's guaranteed income, and a lot of clubs use that guaranteed income to offset other loans. So if you have this transition period of going from regular income that's coming in from the broadcasters that are there at the moment to potentially a new model where the numbers are unknown, that's going to put a lot of clubs at risk. And it's going to take a bit of time for those revenues to even grow or surpass what they're currently getting. So that risk is too high for football clubs owners to actually do that at the moment. So, but there's got to be another way, because ultimately the cost is getting ridiculous. But then the other side of it is they probably know that, because we have this emotional attachment to our club, to our game, to our football, and we're going to find a way, right? We're going to find a way to watch it, because that's what we want to do at the end of the day. But yeah, it's an interesting one. I didn't realise the numbers were so high, but I expected it to be, but I didn't realise they were.
Well, and at the same time, if you go back to the days before Fire Sticks and everything, when those of us of a certain vintage would try to find a VPN and try to find a way to watch a bootleg game, and you have all the pop-up windows and everything, and you get around that, you navigate it. A lot of it, at least in the UK, I thought was tied to the 3 p.m. blackout window in the Premier League, where you had folks that couldn't get into the 3 p.m. game,
Yeah,
which in the United States is the 10 a.m. game that we get to watch. But
yeah,
you can't get into the 3 p.m. game, so you want to watch the 3 p.m. game, and so you find like a VPN or something like that, and that was how they did it in the old days, and now you can do it with the Fire Stick, and you do your end run there, and you end up with all the problems now with modern technology.
yeah. And they have tried to address that in a certain way now, because in the recent contract that sort of got renewed last year, they sort of tidied up the T's and C's, so we only have to have 4 games a week at 3 p.m. And then the rest of the games on the Premier League are spread over Sunday 2 o'clock, Friday night, but Saturday morning, whatever. Do you know what I mean? So all the other weird and wonderful broadcast times. So they are trying to eradicate it. But at the same time, Richard Masters actually come out recently and said, look, we're not going to lift the 3 p.m. blackout because we believe it will have an impact on the lower football leagues. So we're not going to risk that. And again, and in the same article, another article, that the Athletic done, which was on a bit more on the facts and the figures, they actually believe by interviewing people that go to games, and I think they've interviewed 200,000 fans, 77% of them, they've sort of admitted going to lower level games, they may change their mind if the weather's considered bad for that day and there's an option to watch a 3 p.m. game on the TV. So, I mean, yeah, so you could see both arguments for it. I just don't think there is a 100% solution to it. What you will see is probably more investment in organisations like ACE and cyber security to try and catch these now. And I see that Amazon have actually now starting to cooperate with the authorities to actually try and block the Fire Sticks now. So the Fire Sticks that are being used for illegal downstreaming apparently can send messages. They can detect which ones are being used, so they can then send that information to ACE, which is one of the investigatory bodies for that for this type of crime, etc. So they are starting to come down on it. And again, one of my students, when they live in the halls of residence, they sort of said, "We got done, Jace." They come round and they're giving us a £1,500 fine.
Wow.
Which is a little bit of a laugh for us because there's many students that get away with it, but this particular one group didn't.
Wow. One more before we go. £1,500 for a student, man, that's rough.
Yeah. For the year.
Man, no doubt. One more before we go. It was released earlier this week, a couple days ago. Apollo Sports Capital, the sports investment arm of alternative asset manager Apollo, has bought majority control of Atletico de Madrid. Deal values the team at €2.2 billion, or just over $2.5 billion, according to someone familiar with details. Second highest price ever for a control sale, behind Bowley Clearlake picking up Chelsea. Apollo is buying roughly 55% of Atleti, with the deal expected to close first quarter of 26. Miguel Angel Gilmarin, Enrique Cerezo will continue to lead the club as CEO and president, will stay on the cap table alongside Quantum Pacific Group and Ares. Marin was previously the largest shareholder with roughly 35%. In September, Apollo launched their new sports fund led by CEO Al Tilas, co-portfolio managers of Rob Javone and Lee Solomon, and Chief Strategy Officer Sam Porter. The $5 billion fund already is invested in the Madrid Open and Miami Open tennis tournaments in partnership with Ari Emanuel and Mark Shapiro. The fund's parent company had $908 billion in assets under management at the end of September. Yikes, that's a lot of money being thrown around by folks.
Yeah. I mean, let's just put some of those underpinning connections together, right? Sam Porter, Al Tilas, they own, I think there's like 50% of Club Necaxa, right, in Mexico. And Atletico Madrid have got their own club in Mexico as well, Club Atletico. So there's going to be a massive conflict of interest there. But all right, not really in Mexico because you've got the same owners that own multiple clubs in the same league.
Yeah.
But potentially that is. And the other potential area of conflict is that Apollo was founded by Josh Harris, right? And I know he's not a part of the fund now, but he still owns 6% of it. And then obviously he's got his own portfolio of clubs in Europe, namely with Crystal Palace, which he owns a considerable stake in, but most of his other entities are across America. But he's also created a new fund, 26 North, right, which has got apparently just generated a $5 billion fund for sports investments as well. So we're going to have all of this underpinning connections, etc., between clubs, that people that own stakes in clubs in the same league, same competitions. Yeah. But I mean, Apollo is a massive fund, right? Near enough 750 billion worth in assets. Obviously, we know what it's raised for its first round of sports, etc. Ares Management is growing by the year. Ares Management is potentially forming a super fund with CVC, which CVC has its own portfolio of assets, including, which is again could be a conflict of interest down the line. They own a percentage of the commercial rights in La Liga because they funded those clubs that £2 billion to help them get through COVID, etc. So they own, I think it's 8% of all future international broadcasting money, etc. And then they also own 13% of the same model, but also including other commercial operations in League One in France. So if Aries Management merges with them, and Aries Management already in bed with a number of clubs like Chelsea and Atletico Madrid, and obviously they also fund John Textor. All right, that's a little bit touchy at the moment, but still there. And yeah, so there's some interesting connections there that are sort of like no one's really picking up on yet. I mean, okay, nothing really illegal going on, but there's some integrity questions that could be asked here if we really want to do governance in the correct way, and we've got to start picking up on these.
And we will certainly do that as well. As always, my friend, it's great to see you. It's like always when we get to the end of our conversations, there's always that thing that you sit there and you go, hey, wait a minute. And then that turns into something else later on, other things to talk about. It's always great to see you, my friend. The education is fantastic, and we will catch up with you earlier next week, and we'll think about other things to talk about where you have super funds merging with super funds, but only at small percentages. But if they have relationships with leagues, and not just one league, but two, everything continues. Great to see you, my friend.
Yeah, likewise, John. Appreciate it.